Rita Hayworth was one of the most famous sex symbols of Hollywood's golden age, with her appearance being so iconic it was even plastered on the side of an atomic bomb. After being forced into dancing by her abusive father and then coerced into a career in entertainment by her first husband, Rita became one of the most lusted-after actresses of her day, thanks to appearances in films like Gilda and Pal Joey. Throughout her success, there was a dark undercurrent of dependency and mental instability that prevented her from finding peace until the very end. Join Facts First as we explore the real woman behind Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth was born October 17, 1918 in Brooklyn. At birth, her name was Margarita Cancino, and her name remained as such until the start of her Hollywood career. Rita's father was a dancer, and he chose Rita to join in his career with him at a young age. While her siblings were playing games, Rita was performing with her father professionally. Rita later confessed to second husband Orson Welles that her father had been sexually abusive towards her. She wanted to escape from the grasps of her father, so she ran into the arms of the first man who offered marriage to her. She married a car salesman named Ed Junson at the age of 18. He was nearly 40 and didn't love Rita so much as he saw potential in her. Apparently, it was Ed's desire to make his new wife a star. According to Rita, her first husband considered her to be more of an investment than a spouse. Ed can be largely credited with coming up with Rita's Hollywood image alongside Columbia Pictures studio head Harry Cohn. Numerous alterations were made to Rita's appearance, and her name was also changed from Margarita Cancino to her more famous stage name. Given that Rita didn't have very pleasant memories from the name, she didn't mind too much. Physical alterations made to Rita included such minute things as dyeing her hair red, as well as more invasive procedures such as electrolysis to alter her hairline. These changes were made to make Rita appear more American. Rita and first husband Ed Junson married in 1937. Ed began taking Rita all around Hollywood in the hopes of making her a star. Apparently, her first husband would coerce her into having sex with powerful men in the industry so she could get ahead. For this reason, Rita came to consider Ed more of a pimp than a husband. She had come into the marriage with love in her heart, while Ed was simply looking to make a quick buck off of her looks. She was incredibly shy during her early days, though her first husband still forced her to make the rounds and do publicity in order to be seen. Judson found an unlikely ally in studio head Harry Cohn, and they conspired together to alter the burgeoning star's appearance. The actress subsequently signed with Columbia Pictures, and it was only a short time before she was a star. Once that happened, Harry Cohn apparently expected Rita would perform sexual favors for him. When Rita refused, it initiated a feud between her and the studio head that lasted until her final days with the studio. Rita Hayworth worked for Columbia Pictures for 2 decades, over which time Harry Cohn made her life a living hell. Throughout her time with the studio, Rita and Harry would fight over numerous things, including contracts, approval for scripts, and the actress's own personal life. Her final film with Columbia was Pal Joey, released in 1957. Finally, Rita was free from Harry's grip. By the time Rita had broken free from Harry Cohn and Columbia Pictures, she had already been divorced from first husband Ed Junson for over a decade. She divorced him in 1942, the same year she met her second husband. Up until Rita's death, she claimed her second husband was the great love of her life. That was, of course, Orson Welles. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, be sure to give it a like, and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. And stick around for more about Rita Hayworth. Rita married Orson Welles in 1943. The couple was incredibly happy during the early days of their marriage, though it ended up falling apart for a variety of reasons. Firstly, there was the fact the two simply didn't have very much in common. Rita was the much flashier of the two, while Orson was more of a reserved intellectual. Rita tried her best to immerse herself in the world of her new husband and was madly in love with him. But Orson soon fell out of love with his new wife. When he began becoming more elusive in the relationship, Rita found solace in substance abuse and alcohol dependency. When Rita took to the bottle, it only made Orson become that much more distant. Orson apparently began to despise Rita for her need to be loved by him, and despised her even more for her subsequent substance abuse. By the end of their relationship, Rita may have considered the director to be her great love, but he considered her to be a nuisance. It seems Rita tried her hardest to mold herself in the image of who she thought Orson wanted her to be, while all he really wanted her to be was herself. Although Rita added fuel to the fire of their dying marriage with her substance abuse, Orson Welles wasn't without his own faults. Instead of working on his marriage with Rita, he could be found fraternizing with Mistress Gloria Vanderbilt in New York City's social scene. The two fell in love while Rita was pregnant with Orson's child. Another woman Orson was involved with during the time he was married to Rita was Judy Garland. He also had a penchant for soliciting sex workers. Before his death, Orson recalled how he was repulsed by Rita Hayworth's reaction when she found out her visage had been plastered on the side of an atomic bomb. Instead of finding humor in the situation like her husband did, she was so angered she began to actively plot to go campaign to Congress to have the image removed. Harry Cohn had something to say about Rita's outrage, saying she needed to keep it to herself because the American audience would find it unpatriotic. After divorcing second husband Orson Welles in 1947, Rita went on to marry third husband Ali Khan 2 years later. Ali was a Pakistani diplomat, and their marriage lasted until 1953. During that time, she succumbed further and further to drinking. She had started out as a shy, innocent young woman who let others push her around. She developed a much bolder personality as she got older and became better about sticking up for herself, but she could also be incredibly defensive and lash out when it wasn't called for. Her alcoholism made this behavior worse. Following her divorce from Ali Khan in 1953, she went on to marry 2 men over the course of the decade. The first was fourth husband Dick Hames, while the second was fifth husband James Hill. After Rita and Hill divorced in 1961, she never remarried. By that point, she was a much different person than the star Hollywood had come to love, with much of the darkness of her past having damaged her past the point of no return. She spent her last 2 marriages in a disassociated state and arguably never recovered from this state after her 5th divorce. By the 1980s, Rita had begun acting considerably different. Most around her contributed this change in behavior to her alcoholism and were shocked when the actress was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease at the beginning of the decade. She ended up passing away in 1987. During the final years of her life, she lived in an apartment adjoining her daughter's. There, her daughter cared for her needs as she increasingly succumbed to her failing health. Old friends like Orson Welles would also drop in, having long since forgiven her for her more dependent tendencies. Rita had an on-and-off romantic relationship with Glenn Ford, with whom she starred in the 1946 motion picture Gilda. Along with Orson Welles, Ford was one of the old friends who could be found visiting the actress during her final days. Another one was Kirk Douglas. Rita reportedly hooked up with Douglas while still married to third husband Ali Khan. Now it's time to hear from you. What part of this story was most surprising to you? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Facts First if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.